This is section 1.5, angle relationships, and we're gonna look at these right here. If you got one of my bad copies, this says complementary, C-O-M-P-L, and what it means is that you have two angles. That's why this section is called angle relationships. We're looking at between two angles, a relationship between two angles, or they could be together. We're gonna look at more detail in just a second. This right here has the angle like this, and these two can also be separated or together. And supplementary is Supplementary. And this is supposed to be angles. Right here we have a linear pair, and what happens is that this is two angles that make a line, and that's why it's called linear pair, is a pair of angles. Okay, and then these will be together. These will always be together because together they form a line, and then this is supposed to be angles. Right over here we have adjacent angles, and adjacent just means together, stuck together. They share a common ray, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. And this one right here we have vertical angles. That means that the top angle and the bottom angle are the ones that we're referring to as vertical. So you have two lines that intersect and they look like the opposites. So they could be the top or the bottom, or they could be the ones on the side. Either way, it's still the vertical angles. Perpendicular angles is when they intersect at 90 degrees. Sometimes they look like this, and sometimes they look like this. But either way, you would need to be told that they are perpendicular, or told that they're 90. All right, let's fold it in this way. I'm gonna fold this in a little more. And we're gonna start with adjacent angles right over here. And I'm going to draw this diagram. And an angle can be named by its vertex B, and it has a ray. That means it's going to go one direction. It's not a line that goes two directions. It starts and just keeps going another direction. I'm going to purposely make this one smaller because they don't have to be equal. And I'm going to call this 1 and this one 2. Okay, I'm going to say that angle 1 and angle 2 share a common vertex. And what the vertex is just that point that makes the angle. So I'm gonna go ahead and label it B, vertex B, so you know which one I'm referring to. Angle 1 and angle 2 share a common side, and it's the ray. So how you make the ray notation is an end point, and then you make the arrow going to the right every time, even if the ray looks like it's going in opposite direction. You always write the end point first, so B, C. So instead of saying side or segment or line, it is a ray because it has an end point. It has an end point and it goes one direction. When you're talking about the adjacent angles like 1 and 2, and we say that they have no common interior points. Why do we say that? Because we're talking about two separate angles. If we were talking about this big angle, A, B, C, then they would have points in common. But we're talking about two different angles when you call them adjacent. Okay, the next one we have is vertical angles. On vertical angles, I'm going to make a diagram that looks like this. This is A. The intersection will be B. A C over here. A D. And an E. Okay, so remember this V would be the vertex of all the angles. Instead of calling them by the letter name, we're going to call this angle 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we have vertical angles, and they're by pairs. So this one is talking about a relationship between two angles. That means that angle 1 and angle 3 are vertical angles. I'm going to go ahead and highlight those just so you can have a good idea about those. And I'm going to leave the other ones with the marking like this, so you know that those two are the ones that I'm referring to. That also means that angle 2 and angle 4, the opposite angles, are always going to be called vertical angles. What you need to know is that these angles are congruent. And they're congruent angles. But, okay, they're not all congruent to each other. 2 is congruent to 4. It does not mean that 2 is congruent to 3. And that's why we're going to write non-adjacent angles form lines. Non-adjacent angles formed by lines. Formed by lines that intersect. Okay, the next one we have right here is perpendicular. And we're going to label it D, A, B, and C. And I have angles 1, 2, 3, 4. And we have to be told that they're either 90 degrees or that they are perpendicular. Okay, so for this one, lines intersect to form 4 right angles. They would all happen to be congruent because they're all equal to 90. The other thing that we can say is that the line AC is perpendicular to the line BD. So this is our symbol for perpendicular. Don't forget that these are not raised because we're not referring just to the intersection going up. We're referring to the whole line going up and down. So they have to have the little arrow symbols. Okay. Next one is complementary. So don't forget these don't have to be together. So I'm going to draw 2 diagrams, one like this. And I'm going to make that 90-degree symbol, and I'm going to call this angle 1 and angle 2. Or they can be separated. I'm going to say that this one's 40, and I'm going to make this one just a little bit bigger, and say that this one's 50. because they don't have to be the same. So this is two angles that equal 90 degrees. Okay, so to be called complementary, they have to equal 90 degrees. You could either be told that they're 90 degrees or they can have that symbol of a right angle. So can be shown in a right angle. So what does that mean? It's when they're together, they have a 90 degrees. Or they can be two separate angles. All right, next we have supplementary angles. And supplementary angles are two angles that equal 180 degrees. So just like before though, they equal 180, but they don't have to be together. They could be separated. So we're going to draw two diagrams. A supplementary angle that is connected can also be called a linear pair. So we're going to call this 3 and 4 because two angles that make a line are called a linear pair. But this one is what we consider it supplementary because it equals 180 degrees. So one flat line equals 180 degrees, but they could be separate. I'm going to draw this one like this. I'm going to call this 3, and I'm going to say that this is 120 degrees, and then this one like this, and say 60 degrees, and call this angle 4. So together they equal 180 degrees, but they don't have to be together. So they can be two separate angles. On this case right here, remember that they can form a line. And also be called a linear pair. So what is a linear pair? A linear pair is adjacent angles with no common interior points. So when we talk about a linear pair, we're talking about two different angles. I'm going to draw it like this, and I'm going to call this 5 and this one 6. Okay, they have opposite rays. So this one going on this direction and this one going on this one are opposite rays. And this one's the one that is why they form a line. And I'm going to put on here to form a line. And these are also called supplementary because they equal 180 degrees. So you got to remember that supplementary equals 180 degrees. And then on the linear angles, they have to be together.